Irene, thank you very much for joining us today.
You're welcome.
Could you just start by introducing yourself?
My name is Irene Alvarado and I'm the Community Link Officer for Spanish one, for Communities for Conservation project in ELREC, and I'm 26 years old. I was born in Seville in the south of Spain, and I've been in the UK for about 7 years now.
Okay, great. And can you tell us a little bit about life in Seville before you came here?
I could tell you a lot about that actually. I suppose it wasn't very good for me because I come from a working class family.
Mm-hmm.
My parents divorced when I was 11, so it was just my mother taking care of my older sister and me. We never really had a lot of money. We had to deal with things like not having electricity for half a month, every month. Mm-hmm. When the crisis hit in 2008, I was about to finish high school, which I couldn't do because I had to start working. So I started selling insurance policies. That was my first ever job.
Right.
And after that, there was a period in which I didn't really know what to do with my life. I didn't finish high school, so I didn't have a diploma. Mm-hmm. I could not go to university in Spain. You just can't do that. Mm-hmm. And I didn't really have any job prospects there because if you don't have a higher education, there's nothing you can do. Mm-hmm. I also never really felt comfortable in Spain. As a child, I was very quiet. I grew up reading books. Mm-hmm. I never had a lot of friends, and people think it's a stereotype, but it's not. People in Spain are very boisterous, very extroverted. Mm-hmm. So I didn't quite fit in with that. So when I was 17, I think, in 2010, I took an overdose because my mental health hadn't been very good for quite a few years. Mm-hmm. And after that I was diagnosed with borderline personality disorder. My mother didn't really know what to do with that, but personality disorders and mental health in general not really a thing in Spain. Mm-hmm. We're quite behind the times with it. So my sister had moved here that year and she was working. She was starting to save up for her own house. She had a career here. Mm-hmm. So she just kind of shipped me over. And my sister took care of me. She saved my life, mm-hmm. Actually. She took care of me. She found me a job. She helped me get on my feet. And here I am, 7 years later.
And what was your kind of, your initial experiences in Scotland like?
I think it's been quite a smooth process for me to integrate in Scottish society. I think that has to do with the fact that I didn't really associate with Spanish people when I arrived by accident. Mm-hmm. My first job here was as a housekeeper for your hostels, mm-hmm. and everyone around me working there was Scottish. Right. And my sister really didn't really know anyone here apart from her cousin, mm-hmm. Our cousin. So yeah, I didn't meet any Spanish people at all. So that helped me understand social norms and Scottish culture better really quickly. Mm-hmm. And after that I started college, and again it was just Scottish people in my classroom. So I made a solid group of friends that were all just born and raised here. Mm-hmm. I never felt like Scottish culture was very different. I think the major difference that I've seen over the years is that people here are less judgmental, mm-hmm. and more prone to speaking up when there's some kind of discrimination happening. Mm-hmm. Something that bothered me a lot of Spanish people and Spanish youth is that sexist jokes, racist jokes, they're just the norm. Mm. And if you speak up about that, people don't really take you seriously. And I didn't see that here, so I really like that. Mm-hmm.
Okay. And when you kind of came across to be with your sister, were you nervous, or what were your expectations?
No, really. I mean, I didn't have any expectations. I had just been put on medication. I wasn't in a good place, I suppose. I don't think I thought much of it. I was just put on a plane and I arrived here, and I thought, well, okay, I'll just see what happens. I don't think I was very positive about the whole thing. I think because I just imagined that since I didn't have any opportunities in Spain, I wouldn't have any here. which turned out to not be the case at all. I think it took me about 3-4 years to start really paying attention to everything around me and to start being positive and start seeing that I could actually have a life here and a future.
And when you arrived, how welcome did you feel in Scotland?
Quite welcome, actually. So I started working as a housekeeper, and shortly after that I started working with my sister in a tiny shop in the Royal Mile. And I had heard some horror stories about immigrants being treated poorly. I can't say that's been my experience at all, at least not here in Scotland. The only bad experiences I've had have been from people from other countries, actually, tourists mainly, but never from someone from Scotland. I think Scottish people are extremely welcoming, and they're unusually excited when they meet someone from overseas, and they just are very interested in your background, your culture, what you're doing here, if you like it, if you plan to stay, and they just quite like it, I think.
And could you speak English before you came, or did you learn?
Yes and no. When I was 16, well, you study English in Spain since you're 12, but it's not very good. The education is not quite good in Spain, actually. So I had a base, and when I was 16, I was very into comics, and most of the comics I consumed came from the US and the UK. So obviously they were out first in English, and then they had to be translated. I couldn't wait for that, so I decided I would just start reading in them in English with a dictionary, and I would just try to work my way through that. And that actually allowed me to become fluent in English. I had a very solid base when it comes to reading and listening, but obviously I didn't really have many opportunities to speak it. So when I first came, I think it took me about 3 months to get used to the accent. And after that, it was really smooth going. Okay. So I had that advantage, I suppose.
Yeah. Was there anything about Scottish culture that particularly surprised you at all?
Yeah, actually, the one thing that keeps surprising me, I think it was about 2 years after I came here, I was in my house with a friend, and I was showing her pictures of myself when I was a child, and she was really disturbed to see that as a toddler I had my ears pierced. And I discovered that apparently that's just not a thing that people do here. And I'm always really surprised, and I think it's really strange that people react so strongly to that. I suppose because for me that's just the norm. You're born, you're baptized, and then you get your ears pierced.
Right, so when you're very young, right.
But people here are scandalized when they hear that, which is really strange to me.
I've never thought about it that way, but it's definitely not common here, that's for sure. So obviously you started working in the hostels, and then you started working in Royal Mile. Did you start to meet more and more Spanish people from that?
Not really. I mean, it wasn't until 2015, I think, which was when I started volunteering with BIE, that I started getting to know the Spanish community here. I just never had an opportunity to meet them, I suppose. I didn't go out of my way either. Right. I don't know. As I said, I had my group of friends, quite an extensive one, and I just didn't feel the need to do that. Sure. And I suppose I felt a bit like I wouldn't be able to connect with the Spanish community. Sure. Because, I mean, I moved here when I was quite young, I suppose. And it had been quite a few years since I had spoken to anyone from Spain other than my sister. So I didn't really feel like we would have anything in common, which turned out to not be the case once I started to meet them. I suppose I developed a bit of a prejudice against them. There's something that happens. As I said, Scottish people are very welcoming, but there's something that happens, which is you can become a good immigrant in the eyes of the native population, which is what happens when you are fluent in the language, you adopt the slang of the city you live in, and you know about the cultural markers, the pop culture of the place, you know at least a bit of the history, you know the social norms. So it's a bit like you're in between the two cultures, and they really like that, and it's easier to integrate yourself in society when you do that. And it's easier to be accepted, but at the same time you kind of lose touch with where you come from. So I thought that would be a problem, and that also made me kind of look down a bit on other Spaniards who didn't make the same effort to integrate themselves.
Right. Okay.
I suppose.
And did the Spanish people look at you differently at all?
I suppose so, but only because I was really snarky, so I deserved it. I think they have quite a big national identity. Being Spanish for a Spaniard in general is a very big part of their identity. I suppose that's true of anyone from any nationality. So they really don't like it when they see someone who is actively working against that and actively trying to disentangle themselves from their national identity, like I was doing.
Right.
So I suppose, yeah.
Okay. But obviously you started volunteering with PIE, which is a Spanish kind of support service. What inspired you to start doing that?
Well, my sister started before me, and they basically needed someone who was fluent in English because one of the things that we did was call places, like if someone needed to make an appointment for their national insurance number. So it was easier to have me do that kind of stuff.
Right.
So initially I did it as a favour for my sister, but after that I hadn't been paying attention, and I realised that even though there's a problem with Spanish people kind of not wanting to mingle with the population here and with society here, it's also very difficult to do that when you arrive in the country. You don't know anyone, you don't know the language, and you don't know how anything works. I assume that because it was so easy for me to just get used to Scotland, it would be easy for everyone, and that's not the case. So when I saw how many times people didn't have access to the support they needed just because they didn't know it was there or they couldn't speak the language, I thought that was really unfair and really silly. So that made me actually want to work with PIE and want to get to know the community better.
Did that kind of, I guess that led you to integrate, well not integrate, but be part of the Spanish community in Edinburgh a bit more? Yeah,
I think I am a bit more now. I still don't feel as comfortable with Spanish people as I feel with Scottish people, I suppose. But I think I shared a lot of that silly prejudice that I held against them. And I'm quite active in the Facebook groups that we have. I do a lot of... Spanish people are very into community support.
Right.
More so in the south. Working class people in Spain, that's how they survive. Because we don't have support from the government, we don't have a lot of welfare, for example.
Sure.
So that's something that I always really, really liked about Spain, and that's something that has continued here actually in the Spanish community thanks to these groups, thanks to people just speaking to each other. I'll do this for you and tomorrow you can do this for me. I really like that. And I think because I speak English and lots of people don't, or they just arrived and they haven't caught up yet.
Yeah.
I have many opportunities to help people in the community, like that.
Yeah. And so the work you're doing for ELREC at the moment, can you explain that a little bit about that?
Yeah. So what I do is I basically post in Spanish community groups online, and I put posters around my college. And what I do is whenever someone has a problem with their energy company, either they don't understand their bill, or they want to change companies, or they have debt, or they simply need someone who speaks English that can be an in-betweener between the company and them, I step in and I help them with that. Okay.
So obviously you're quite sort of inspired to help the Spanish community in different ways with the different things that you've been doing. Do you want to continue doing that, or is that?
Yeah, but like, I mean, first I want to go to university, but I definitely, after that, I think I'll probably try to go back to doing that kind of stuff. If not with Spanish people specifically, just charity work in general and support work in general. I would like at some point to be able to create a bigger version of PIE, if that's possible, where we have kind of actual offices and actual funding to help support Spanish people, because there's need of a lot of that, which I didn't know beforehand. So yeah, we really like to continue doing that in the future.
Yeah. And what is it you're hoping to study at university?
I want to do philosophy and sociology.
Okay.
So kind of ties in with that a bit.
Yeah, sure.
And after that I would like to maybe come back to ELREC if that's possible. I don't know, we'll see.
Is there any part of sort of Spanish culture that you particularly want to hold on to while you're living in Scotland? You spoke about the kind of community spirit, but is there any other?
I don't think so. I mean, I've never been big on national identities. I think part of that is because growing up, I was very disappointed by my country. So I never really felt like I was part of it. I don't know, I don't think, apart from that, I suppose the big that I like is the heritage, the culture. Something that surprised me a lot about Scotland is that there doesn't seem to be a wealth of historical culture in the country. When I don't know, when I talk to people here and I ask them, so where do Scottish people come from? What are some ancient cultural markers that you have? They can't give me an answer, and I don't know if that's because they don't know about it, or if that's because there's just no.
Right. Okay.
So I think that always makes me very sad. That's something that we're very proud of, our history and our culture in Spain. Sometimes that's not a very good thing, but yeah.
That's interesting because I guess a lot of the kind of touristy things that you see about Scottish culture is all about your kind of Braveheart image, your kind of you know, this struggle against the English and all that kind of aspect to it that you get. But then, I guess when you speak to people one-on-one, often that's not what comes out first. If you see what I mean? Yeah.
And beyond that, there's very little that people have been able to tell me. I was told once by a few uni students that part of that is because until about 5 or 10 years ago, there was kind of Scottish society as a whole felt like it was shameful to be proud of being Scottish. I'm not entirely sure if that's true or if that's just their own view or why that is. But I think the reason why lots of young people in Scotland can't really give you an answer when you ask them about heritage, culture, history is because of that. Although I think even younger generations are starting to be more aware of that and are starting to become more interested in that game, which I think is a very good thing.
And have your views about Scotland changed over the years?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I feel like I know the country and the people better. But my opinion, for example, hasn't changed. I still think Scotland is an unusually good country in the current climate. And I think I admire Scottish education quite a lot. I think the Scottish education system is one of the best I ever come across. I don't know, I've always felt much more comfortable here with people here than anywhere else. And even when Brexit happened, that didn't really change anything because I personally haven't seen a difference in the way people treat me, the way the country as a whole seems to think about the EU or immigrants. I never experienced anything negative in that regard.
Okay. And do you feel Scottish, or do you feel part of Scottish society?
I don't really know. I mean, as I said, I'm not really big into on national culture, national identity. But I suppose if I had to choose, if I feel more Spanish or Scottish, I would say Scottish.
Okay.
Sometimes I don't really think about it, and sometimes I just remember, oh, by the way, I'm Spanish. And I suppose the only times I feel a bit rejected or feel like I don't belong here is when I remember that I can't really vote outside local levels. So that really feels a bit like a slap to the face and like makes me feel not very welcome.
Sure.
But apart from that, I forget that I wasn't born here.
Right. And this is quite a big question, but how do you think moving to Scotland has kind of changed your life?
It's changed my life entirely.
Right.
I mean, if I hadn't moved to Scotland, I wouldn't be going to university. I wouldn't have a job. My mental health would not have recovered. Everything, actually, just my life would be completely different, and I'm not even sure I would be alive to this day. So it's been a massive positive change.
Mm-hmm. That's good. That's good. And is there any part of Scotland that you particularly kind of hold on to, or that keeps you here?
The educational thing.
Mm-hmm.
I like that I have about 70 paths to go to university, even if I didn't finish high school.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I like Edinburgh, for example. I haven't really been to many other cities in Scotland,
Mm-hmm.
but I suppose this is very touristy, but I really, really like the face of the city. I really like how it looks.
Mm-hmm.
The architecture is really different to what I'm used to. Architecture in Seville is really, really nice as well, but it's a completely different thing. We have a Muslim heritage from the north of Africa.
Mm-hmm.
Andalusia was Muslim for 800 years. So we got lots of mosques that became churches. You can see buildings being built to this day that look like they could be Morocco.
Mm-hmm.
So this is completely different to what I'm used to, and I don't think I'll ever get bored with that. When it comes to the people, I definitely like the people here better.
Mm-hmm.
I'm kind of suspicious about moving somewhere else and starting over, because what if I don't like the people there as much as I like people here,
Sure.
So I'm quite comfortable here,
Mm-hmm.
for now at least.
Yeah. And do you ever go back to Spain?
I go usually about once a year to visit my mother.
Mm-hmm.
I don't really have any friends there. Everyone left
Right.
the country looking for work. So yeah, I go once a year. I don't really like going back. There's not good memories there for me.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a bit boring because I'm just. But recently, a few months back, I went to Seville with my boyfriend, and I thought it was very interesting. It was a whole new experience because instead of just being me in my house, I had to show him the city,
Mm-hmm.
and it was like seeing the city for the first time.
Mm-hmm.
It was really interesting and really enjoyable. So I think I'll be going back way more often now.
Yeah, it's often the case. When someone comes to visit you, you see much more of the city than when you're on your own.
Mm-hmm.
And in a kind of general sense, do you think that immigration has a positive effect on Scotland?
I think so. I can't speak for the whole of the UK, but I think, if I'm not wrong, everyone tells me so, and I read articles about it, Scotland has a problem with population. Population is quite low.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's a very good thing that people come over, first of all, to fill out the country. Second, because I think it's always a good idea to have people from different cultures all living together.
Mm-hmm. I
I don't think isolationism is ever good for anyone or for any country.
That's great. Well, that's all the questions we have. So
Okay.
thanks very much for
That's
being
no
with us
problem at all.
today.